I would love to start this presentation by a deep breath in and a breathe out. And please repeat with me 3 times. Breathe in and breathe out. And last time, breathe in and breathe out. Whenever my day as a design director gets a little bit too intense, I like to take a moment to step out. And I pull out Headspace, I sit down, and I run a 3-minute meditation. And it works wonders. It helps to calm me down and ground me more in the present life. And I think we could all use a little bit more of this kind of thing on a creative level to keep us sane throughout the years and to avoid the biggest fear of every designer. So today, I want to take a moment away from, editing Figma components, writing interview scripts, and running workshops, to take a moment to step out and reflect on the products we're designing and the role they have in our lives. Let's take this 15 minutes in between the productive case studies and lessons learned to a little bit less productive reflection on what we're doing as designers. And we will ponder on a few important questions about the future. And for every question, I will pause, and I would love if you could take 3 deep breath-ins, breath-outs, and answer the question in your head. Feel free to shout out your answers if you want as well, but no need to. So basically, because of my background in human-computer interaction studies, my favorite topic of every reflection and discussion is our relationship with technology. But especially now, as designers, I think this topic is especially relevant whenever we talk about the future. We're fortunate enough in Poland to have a few great trend forecasters, and one of them, Natalia Hatalska, publishes with InFuture Institute a yearly trend map. And when you look at the one from 2022, you can see that one of the most active megatrends is society of incoherence. Increasing technologicalization and associated algorithmization of our life is disrupting the world as we know it. A few technocentric trends within that category are robotized life, growing use of automation and robots in various areas of social and economic life, techlash, attitude of strong opposition to large technological companies that is associated with a more conscious use of technology and giving up on an excessive presence in everyday life, and loss of self-determination, when humans are losing the sense of freedom and self-control because the decisions and choices they make are to a large extent based on algorithms. And when I think about it, it seems clear to me that our society is incoherent because we no longer live in social networks. We live in complex socio-technical systems where technology is an inherent part of our work, hobbies, relationships. And when I saw this trends map and the green future that it paints, I couldn't help but wonder, what role do designers have in socio-technical system of the future? Are products that you're currently working on strengthening or weakening the trends that I've mentioned? When I think about my role as a designer, I think back to the term that I've heard recently, originally coined by Olivia McKayla-Ross, CyberDuos. I don't know about you, but I love that term. It sounds really great. CyberDuos are about helping people develop positive relationship with technology. I think that might be my next aspirational title, because it really reflects what my personal purpose is when it comes to being a designer. I want to enable people to redefine their relationship with technology. But Establishing relationships takes time, and the relationships change as we grow. So if we as designers want to enable people to develop positive relationships with the products we create, should we design products that change over time? Should our voice assistants have special discovery modes for the first few weeks of usage before we fall into a familiar state? Should our apps be focused on core value when we download them and then gradually grow more and fill out the dashboards? Should our products change their functionalities as we change the needs and expectations? In other words, should we design interfaces that change over time, gradually building trust and understanding? How are the products that you're currently working on would change over time together with their users? Gradually building trust and understanding is especially relevant when we face the reality of automation of tasks, outcomes of incomprehensible machine learning models, and autonomous agents. With the recent advances in ML technology, more and more smart products fill out our daily lives, pre-trained on enormous data sets, and often learning from our daily interactions. They land up in our daily spaces, including the most private one, home. And at home, users form direct relationships with those products that are actually working on predefined actions set by big corporations and work within a framework in which the homeowner is more of a passive user. They're easing lives and saving time, but they don't really mold around the user because they're not open-ended. They have a set of predefined functionalities, and they're responding to certain conditions on and off, giving user binary choices, yes or no, and setting conditions for their behavior. The agency in our houses is conditional and determined by the curators, us, designers, businesswomen, lawyers, but not really by users. And this creates a dilemma. How can users stay in position of the control when they are giving up direct manual control and they are only equipped with limited understanding? There's probably a lot of answers to this question. When I'm thinking about it and I'm reflecting on the product that I'm designing, I tend to navigate towards the concept of negotiated agency and a framework that helps me design more democratic, engaging, and inclusive experiences, and interactions in which people can have a dialogue with the products that they have in their house and discuss the power dynamics between them and the technology. I started reflecting on the products from situational and relational perspective, asking the what, why, how questions to define the key interactions that can be focused on while trying to define better the agency of the products we design. For example, temporal consent. We're used to having only one option. Say yes to agree to those lengthy and obscure terms and conditions. Say yes to give Instagram access to your location, phone, microphone, storage, or say yes to agree to our cookie policy. But in our everyday life, we know that consent is a little bit more tricky than that, yes? Some of you might be familiar with this phenomenal tea and consent YouTube video. And if you're familiar with the metaphor, great. If you're not, bear with me for this example, for those that are not. So imagine you propose somebody a cup of tea, and they respond, oh my God, great, I would love tea. Awesome. But if they're unsure whether they would like tea, they're unconscious, or maybe they changed their minds in the time it took you to brew the water and prepare the kettle, don't force-feed them tea. If they said yes once, don't take for granted that this means yes every time and don't show up at their home and force feed them tea. That is true for sex, and that is also true for data privacy. Consent is everything. So how might we redesign consent in our smart products? One of the ways is to bring more contextual and temporal aspects into the consent. What if the length of your swipe could decide whether you're consenting for a day, week, or a month? What if your decision to let the smart thermostat take over the temperature in a house would only last until the end of the winter? What if you would consent to agree to Alexa to listen to you during the day, but not during the night? Or for Instagram to access your pictures that were done in the office, but not the ones done in the bedroom? This may seem a little bit fluffy or unrealistic or expensive to develop, but the reality is that we are already on this path, and we're already taking the steps in that direction. We've witnessed the introduction of only this time option, or change from agreeing to every aspect at the beginning of the usage when you install the app, to contextual questions for every single agreement that happen one at a time. So the question here is not really about what, but what is the next step only. And another important key interaction to consider in defining the power relations with our smart products is the control handover. Let's look at this quote from a smart thermostat usability study. The problem is it's too controlling and not enough adaptive to our immediate needs. I've had a pregnant daughter visiting, and she doesn't like hot weather, so we turned it down for her. Once you turn it down, then it learns and it says, okay, you're going to want to do that every single day. It just becomes a very complex thing to adapt. It makes assumptions, and I don't live by assumptions. I can't train it to make a different assumption. And I feel like I've lost control over it. It's only able to see the clock schedule, and we don't live by the clock. In the reality in which our devices learn from continuously collected data, we need to find easy and simple ways to indicate exceptions from our daily routines. Our algorithms are as imperfect as their creators, and they're going to fail, and they're going to present unexpected harmful biases. And we need to be ready for that. How can we support moments of control handover? By design. To feel at ease, users need simple interactions and control handover that are not hidden deeply in settings, but are rather visible straight away. They're not affecting collected data, and one look at the device lets you know whether it's working in autonomous or manual mode. Maybe we should think about smart devices a little bit more how we think about autonomous cars, with support for various levels of automation, from fully independent to the ones that are only supporting our actions. And the more smart our devices become, and the deeper the relationship gets, the more important aesthetic of interaction becomes. It helps users build mental models of how the system works. And particular kind of smart devices, voice assistants, is really kind of a breakthrough, but also a downfall of this area. On a positive note, ever since voice boomed, we've heard more and more discussions about experience aesthetics and brand personas, and those kind of topics. If you are designing a voice assistant, you're bound to start by imagining a particular person, or maybe you are starting by composing an audio mood board for a Spotify playlist, trying to really get into the nitty-gritty details of what you're trying to design. Unfortunately, those early efforts often end up being very shallow and only affect the language used in the voice assistant. And to illustrate that example, let's look at early Pacman. So in early Pacman, you have 4 ghosts, and each of them has a very distinctive nature. One chases you, one ambushes, one wanders, and one is really unpredictable. But they look kind of the same. Their nature is revealed in the interaction style. So in the outcome of the algorithm, that happens every time a ghost meets the wall. Quite opposite is true very often for the voice assistants. A Google action that meows after every sentence and has a cat icon may seem cat-like, but in reality, this interaction style doesn't really resemble a pet. It doesn't really help the user build a mental model of how the system works and what kind of outcome they might expect. To help people build those mental models, it's important that we couple the outside, the visual or audio aesthetics with the interaction aesthetics. And when those two are coupled, let's say we have a voice assistant that is designed with a friendly interaction style in mind, they will not only call you buddy, but they will also give you answers in a way a friend would. For example, giving you restaurants that are good for you, healthy, or maybe the ones that you really like. On contrary, a playful voice assistant would suggest restaurants you've never been to. And this is not a new idea, and it might seem very intuitive as well. Some of those early interaction styles have been described as long as over 20 years ago by Peterson, Iverson, and Kroc in their 3 perspectives on HCI. But it does have immense potential for the future, supporting discoverability of the smart products and helping users build those mental models. And whenever I'm looking for an interaction style to play with, I tend to make my list a little bit longer when considering potential ones. Should it be like a tool, like a toy, like a dialogue partner, guide, friend, pet, medium, system, think, or maybe human-like? I try to find a metaphor for a human-machine interaction and understand what kind of interaction ideals we're aiming towards. And now, what about you? What is the interaction style of the product you're currently working on? Is the visual or audio aesthetics coupled with the interaction aesthetics? Most common answer to this question, especially if you ask a business stakeholder, is it's a friend. Our product is a best friend for every student, every Uber driver, every lady dressed in pink. And you might already see the problem with that, but let's go through it. Think about do you have a best friend? Yes? No, probably some of you, or I hope most of you, have a best friend. How many best friends do you have? Anybody having more than 10? It's probably quite unlikely. It's quite hard for us to maintain a large group of best friends. It's virtually impossible. And some of our relationships in our lives are in the background, and that's okay, and that doesn't make them less valuable. But the same is true for our devices. As our homes and as our phones become more full and full with smart products, we need to remember that some of them are only designed to be in the background. So I will leave you with this final and maybe most challenging question. How might we design ambient relationships? How do we design relationships that fade out, that they don't overwhelm? And it might be the core question and challenge for us in our reflection on the future of smart devices. And that's it. That was, at least I hope, you had a couple of unproductive minutes of reflections on the things you design every day. Feel free to catch me afterwards if you want to discuss the future of smart devices, automotive, health tech, or STAR. And I would love to talk to you later. I don't bite. Have a great day.